Toni Holle. She is running for California State Assembly, District 52. You know, one of the things when I read about Toni, she had a background, a strong background. One of the things that I loved about her was, one, she's a conservative. Two, she's married. She has children. She has grandchildren. She's lived a wonderful life. So I'm going to read a little bit about her and share a little bit about her education and whatnot. And you can go to her website and learn more. But really, when we get down to the meat and potatoes, she has the experience. She has the life experience that we need. Patriots, not politicians, up in Sacramento doing the hard work we need done. From her website, I wrote down a little bit here. It says Toni and her husband, Jeff, have lived in Chino for over 35 years. They have 2 grown sons, 4 grandchildren. Toni has been an active local and state politics for over 10 years. She has worked on numerous candidate campaigns and a number of initiatives, including Veto Gunmageddon. This is important, folks. She believes in the Second Amendment. She's worked on the bathroom bill and most recently the repeal of the gas tax, which is vital as well. She knows the issues, ladies and gentlemen, that are going on right now in the California State Assembly and that matter to you. She was also active in the Chino Measure H campaign to help preserve the Chino General Plan and defeat D.R. Horton. Toni has a bachelor's degree in business administration and received her MBA from Western Governors University. Welcome to the Erin Cruz Show, Toni. We're so grateful to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, what got you into politics? I mean, you've been in politics and involved on the ground for some time now.
Well, I'd always voted. That was one of the things. As soon as I turned 18, I went out and I registered to vote, and I just voted, and I thought that was enough. And as I started growing more and more aware of things going on, and what really woke me up was when Obama ran, and I started really looking at that, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I have to do something. And I think that's what really woke me up and really got me in there, working on campaigns, working on initiatives, and really made me an active participant in the whole process.
Right, because we need that. We have to be an active player, or we're subject to whatever the government says is their status quo, like the gas tax. You know, you mentioned some of these issues, and they're big issues. You know, they're picking the bathroom bill and the gas tax. They're picking at the family unit. You know, one thing that people talk about is, you know, I want to have a good life for my family, but I can't live so close to work. I need to move out to a more rural community and commute. Well, now that the gas tax is in place, all that money that went onto their food table and saved them money so they could have a good life for their family is now being gobbled up by bureaucracy.
That's right.
Wasted. And being put into somebody else's pocket. For what reason? Now, what makes you get involved in the gas tax bill and repeal the gas tax? I mean, is it just that?
Well, that was part of it. I mean, taxes are something that I really work against a lot of times because I think we're already overtaxed. But that one hit particularly close here because although I live in Chino Hills is the neighboring city, and Josh Newman was the senator for that city. So that really gave me an opportunity to get involved at that point in time. So I helped gather signatures for the recall petition because
so you're that really involved, really super involved.
That affected my community.
Absolutely, and yourself as well. You know, your family, and this is what they're really eroding is the all-American family, the Californian family.
Definitely.
Day after day, and you talk about the bathroom bill and gunmageddon. I mean, you can't get more fundamental than gun rights, especially in a criminal state like California, where the governors and these bureaucrats want to take away guns from law-abiding citizens and regulate everything to the high hilt.
Yeah.
Yet people are running.
And then they lower penalties for using a gun in a crime. So where's the sense in that?
Where's the sense in that for the law-abiding citizen? I applaud you for getting involved. Now, you're in Chino, and you're grassroots. You know, how can people get involved in your campaign? Because I know, I don't know about you, but I've seen several different candidates who, you know, they need help right now. They need help on the ground. They need help financially, getting out the vote. Exactly. This is a all through California issue. How can people get involved and help you? What is your major need?
Definitely money, and then people willing to walk the precincts. I have quite a few ready to go, so we're going to be starting that pretty soon. I have a local club that's going to be helping me with my area in Pomona, which is great. So they're going to take 1,000 of my flyers and walk the neighborhoods. But I still have my other cities, Ontario, Montclair, and Chino, that I'll need help in. But definitely finances. I mean, that's what helps.
You need the materials.
Get more. That's right. You know, more flyers, more signs, the ability to do some of the various other types of advertising.
Well, you're running against an incumbent, clearly.
Yes.
And with incumbents comes a big purse.
That's right.
And name recognition. You know, I believe there's a large walkaway movement right now. We're seeing with the, you know, current Kavanaugh situation and the Supreme Court where, you know, the progressive left has gone way off the hilt. And most Democrats are saying, this just isn't my party anymore. Where's the common ground? Where's working for the all-American family, the Californian family? I mean, what message do you have to people in California who might be Democrats who are thinking, do I really want to vote for the incumbent again who might not be serving me or my interests? Who is this Toni gal? What do you have to say to them in terms of your policies or your ideas which might resonate?
Well, I would encourage them to check out my website because I do address some of those issues. And some people may be, possibly, the Second Amendment. That's one where a lot of Democrats, you have a lot of them that are gun owners and are pro-Second Amendment, but then there's some that feel, we need gun control. But the tax issue, the education issue, jobs issues, I think that's where I can resonate with them. And as far as my incumbent goes, I mean, just go and check out his voting record. He voted to raise the gas tax. He voted to ration water to 55 gallons.
Right, without even any need. They have a lot of money. We have the highest, I've heard you say this. I've seen it on your website. I've heard many candidates talk about this. We have some of the highest taxes in the country. I talk to people in Arizona. I talk to people in Texas. I talk to people all over the United States. And our taxes are high. The revenues then are high. We have a lot of people here. So where's the money going?
That's what I'd like to know.
So are you willing to look at that? Are you willing to call regulators onto the carpet and say, hey, DMV, hey, transportation, Caltrans, whomever, we want to know where you're spending this money.
Definitely. So I've done a little bit of research trying to find that. So.
Well, because that might resonate with a lot of Democrats even who want to know where their hard-earned money is being spent. Because I believe that it's just we have a bunch of regulators, legislators, and politicians who are just not being wise about the money they're getting. It's not their money. Why do they need to really care? So you want to advocate for that. That's wonderful. Where do you stand on some of these crazy regulations, like the straws?
Well, the thing is that we're over-regulated, and these regulations strangle businesses. And you see businesses moving out of California. When the businesses leave, then, jobs leave, and tax base leaves. So that's really tough. I mean, you can't have a completely regulation-free, society. I mean, we have to have various things, but some of these regulations are just, to build houses, what they have to go through. I mean, that's part of the problem with, I think, the cost of housing in California is all the regulations and the fees and permits that home builders have to pay in California gets added into the price of the house.
Right. when I think of Republicans, and I ran for United States Senate, I think of less tax, less regulation, less government. And that's very important. Government has a very limited role within society. It is to protect on a very limited basis, provide infrastructure, and a skeleton for which people can operate and live freely.
Right.
And California has gone so far off that beaten path. I'm like, how much more can they regulate? If they can find air, they might regulate it.
I would think so.
Don't give them
they're
ideas.
regulating the water. They want to regulate it to 55 gallons of use per day.
And where do you stand on that?
I think that's ridiculous. We should just be able to use the water. If they would spend the time and the money in building water storage, we already passed the Proposition 1 or whatever it was a few years back that was supposed to help with all that, which it didn't, and we knew it wasn't going to. But if they would spend the time and money and effort to develop water storage, we wouldn't have to worry about this. Instead, they'd rather ration us to 55 gallons of water per day. And if you use more than that, then, you're going to pay more, and they're going to start hitting the cities with, penalties and fees, which means they're going to hit the residents with that.
Right. It ends up driving. I always look at this as government gets involved, it drives costs up.
Yeah.
They're not exactly efficient.
No.
And so the less government we can have, the better. The less tax, the better. Consumer-based programs are good because if you're needing water, you can pay for it. We have plenty of water. It's just a matter of, like you say, how do we store it? How do we manage it in a responsible way? And so I'm glad to hear you say that. Now, where do you stand on bills like SB-54 as it relates to immigration? And people get this all wrong.
They do.
SB-54 is not about immigrants, legal immigrants. It's about what happens to an unlawful alien or an illegal alien when they commit or break a law here and they commit a crime, when they go to let them out into the community. Now people can't, communicate with ICE.
Right.
So where do you stand on that issue?
Well, I am totally against the whole sanctuary policy. I've actually gone to several city councils that had it on their agenda and spoke out on it. We've tried to get it on the city council in my local city, and we have not been successful at doing it yet. But what people have to understand, like you said, it's not about immigrants. My grandparents were immigrants. They came over from Italy. They came the right way. They became citizens. But it's not about that. It's about illegals and committing crimes and being released into, the neighborhood, and then ICE having to go into the neighborhood. And people don't understand, when you have
disconnect.
It is. And when you have them being released at the jail, you have one or two ICE officers there to pick up them. When they're out in the neighborhood, it takes many more ICE officers,
you have to keep
because of public
safe.
safety. Right. And it puts people at danger. And, the other thing, too, if they go knocking on a door looking for this criminal that they want to pick up, and there's other people that are living there who are undocumented, who may have, other than being here illegally, have not committed any other crimes, they could be swept up in that as well because they're there, and then ICE is there knocking on the door. So it's not really good for them either, and people don't understand that. It's really a public safety issue.
Right. Well, it is a public safety issue, and I think that the media has created chaos in the sense that they just want to create more clicks, more revenue, cause buzz, cause division, and instead of finding solutions, they want to create more problems, isolate people, and find their voting base, so to speak, and rather than fix the problem, which we need those tough solutions. And California legislators are getting in the way of federal immigration law. And so I'm glad to hear, your stance. Somebody was mentioning to me about how we currently in the California legislature, it's been adjourned, but we have a lot of people there who are super ultra liberal. super progressive left, communist, socialist left. They want universal health care. Where do you stand on universal health care?
Well, I am definitely opposed to that. I think anytime you take something like that universal, I think you're going to have lower quality and probably higher cost. Healthcare, a lot of people are saying there, healthcare is a right. Well, presently, people, if they don't have insurance, even undocumented people, they can go to a hospital, and because of various laws, hospitals have to treat them. But the whole thing is we should have a choice. You have to have free market. People that have insurance through their jobs and they like their insurance, they, as Obama said, should be able to keep it, right? But, you want free market, because free market is what gives you better quality and better prices. When they have to compete, they're going to, provide a better service. And universal health care is, basically you look at the VA. That's sort of an example of, what happens. And look at how our veterans who, lay down their lives, how they're treated. They don't get good medical care at the VA.
Yeah, and I somewhat have a little bit of a different view about that, because in the sense that in the VA, that is a benefit. It's part of their overall compensation for work that they've already done, and now they're receiving the benefit, and it was part of their total package. But the unfortunate part is it's a government-run organization, much like the DMV, which you're talking about, which is highly inefficient. Anytime government tries to do something, it doesn't tend to do it well. And in the case of universal health care, we say universal health care, that's the terminology that they're using in Sacramento. But really, it's socialism.
It's socialized medicine, exactly.
Socialism, communism, where's the limit? At what point do we say free market? Allow people the opportunity to buy it. People have access to care. It's just a matter of whether or not they can afford it or pay for it or not.
Right. And when you have government, and when you have government involved in it, then where do they draw the line at what services you can get?
Right, what services you can get, what you're eligible for, what you're not eligible for. The costs go up, and we've seen issues with Medicare, Medicaid. We've seen problems with the government-run perspective of the VA. So I'm glad to hear where you stand on that, because free market is the solution there. Unfortunately, people aren't looking at the price tag. We have currently, I think, we bring in somewhere around rough $200 billion, in tax revenue. They're saying that this program is going to cost $400 billion. I mean, we will have to over double the tax rate in California just to even think about paying for it. And we know government isn't efficient, whatever projections they make is going to be.
Yeah, exactly.
And yet here I see that on the news, all they're reporting is 2% to 4% increase in tax rate. We know that that's not the number. So I'm very glad to hear that you're from the perspective of free market, because keeping government out of the issue is probably what's good for the people.
Yeah, exactly.
Less government. Now, on the terms of, we talked about immigration, we talked about healthcare reform. The DMV, we kind of touched on that, but not really. I didn't really ask you outright. Where do you stand on auditing the DMV? This is a hot topic.
Yeah, I definitely think we should audit the DMV. There definitely needs to be some looking in there. They have antiquated computer systems. There's just a lot of issues there that I think need to be looked at. It's not run well. That's obvious by these lines of that people are trying to get their real ID. And, the other thing, too, is I think we really need to take a look and see, because we have the California motor voter law, to make sure that people aren't being registered to vote when they shouldn't be. So there needs to be an overall audit and take a look at everything with the DMV. Right,
what's really going on there. Aside from the fact that it's many people there are union, what's really going on and where the money's going. And you bring up a good point about the voter motor law where they're registering people to vote. I spoke to a gal up in LA when I was traveling, and she's here on a green card. And she didn't know that when she got her driver's license, she might be signed up to vote. And she didn't understand that she may or may not be eligible to vote. And if she did vote accidentally, that could put her at potential risk if she were to become a citizen, and they then looked at whether or not she was registered, whether or not she voted. It might literally cause her a problem in her becoming a citizen. There are a lot of issues. People who don't really realize and understand the intricacies of our laws here. People are being put at risk. Good people who want to follow the laws, people who want to be a part of our process, want to be a part of the future of the United States of America and do the right thing, like this gal. And the DMV could be getting in the way of that. So I'm glad to hear that you're willing to look at that big picture, as hard as it might be.
Right, which it probably will be. But
it probably will be, but I think it's good. Why wouldn't people want to know how our money is being spent, even if you're a Democrat?
You should. I mean, it's your hard-earned money. It's your tax dollars.
It doesn't matter if you're Republican-controlled or Democrat-controlled, independent-controlled, whatever it is. It's taxpayer funding. Government should be run as efficiently as possible, and be looked at closely. And I'm so glad to hear this, because that's not what we're currently seeing in your district from the current incumbent.
No.
So, does the current incumbent support high-speed rail?
Yes, he does.
Where do you stand on that issue?
I look at that as a total boondoggle and the train to nowhere. It's ridiculous to waste that kind of money. If you're going to build something like that, it needs to really be built with private, dollars, not our tax dollars. And it's not something that I think that even if it was built, we would use. Californians the way California is structured, I mean, we like our cars, we drive our cars, and I don't think it's something that is going to ever be able to get the revenue to pay for it, because it's just not the way that we're structured here in California, and it's a joke.
I think you make a good point right there. It's a joke. If it made sense, the people would be 100% behind it. The people would want it, and it would be by a large margin, right? I mean, I think that's it. That's how it works. and the fact that so many people are against it, and the fact that it won't even be done for 20 some odd years, and the technology has already been since gone and past, and they're going to be using current infrastructure and a whole other slew of problems surrounding it. I think that you're correct. It's a great way for them to waste taxpayer money into pad budgets and unions or whatever they're doing. My incumbent, actually, when I was running for U.S. Senate, Dianne Feinstein, her husband was very involved in that. Yeah, very difficult to watch as Californians, hard-earned tax dollars of everyday American citizens. For the children of California, because education is also a hot topic, we're seeing that they want more and more regulations. They're wanting more and more oversight and controls by the schools. We're seeing that non-citizens get a lot more resources than our citizens are getting. Where do you stand on not the federal Department of Education, but education as a whole in the state of California, and limiting homeschoolers and all this kind of thing?
Well, I'm definitely a proponent of school choice, of homeschooling, charter schools. I think that for parents, they need to have, different options, and they need to be able to choose the option that's best for them. My children went through the public school system. I have a son and daughter-in-law that are public school teachers. But, there's a lot of things that are not...
And they're good jobs, too. They are. And good for the kids, as long as it's...
And they're good teachers. But, I think when you have the state involved in it, that's where there's a breakdown. I think if you get local control more back to these school districts and, more parental input into that, I think we'd have a better education system. And, it's hard because, some of the things that they're teaching our kids, it's so different than when I was in school. And just even the level of what they teach them and revisionist history and things like that, where they're not really teaching, what really happened sometimes.
The basics.
And yeah,
of reality.
Government classes and learning how government runs and all of that, civics classes. I mean, they should be having those in school, and they've pretty much done away with almost all of that. And, those are important things, I think. And I think really, you want to look at who's on your school board and who's running your schools and try to get the best people in there, because it's so important. You don't have a lot of choice sometimes when there's as far as laws that come down on what they're supposed to teach curriculum wise. But if you get a good school board in there, maybe we might be able to fight back on some of these issues.
Right, and when we get people in the California State Assembly that actually see the parents' vision,
that makes a big difference.
Because government, sometimes they don't necessarily need to regulate more; they need to get out of the way, and be smart about the way they regulate to free up the space for people to live freely. And one of these issues is the inoculations, the vaccinations.
Right.
Where do you stand on that issue?
Well, I actually worked on the initiative that Tim Donnelly had with
We're a
against
fan of Tim Donnelly.
Yeah. So, against the forced vaccination. I think it should be a parental choice. My kids, at the time when my kids were young, there wasn't any concern about that. Everybody vaccinated their kids, so I vaccinated mine. My children,
it was also a different world. Different type of big
definitely
pharma.
was.
I mean, there were a lot of different things.
And as you said, I have 4 grandchildren. They're ages, 4 and under, so they're little, and their parents have chosen to vaccinate them, which is their choice. But I think there's, certain things, parents have kids that have certain health issues where they're concerned about the vaccinations. And I really think it should be a parental choice in the matter. I mean, we have diseases, unfortunately, now that we didn't have to worry about before because of the influx of illegals crossing the border and bringing certain diseases with them. But I still think it needs to be a parental choice.
Right. And, the issue of immigration is one that's of concern because with legal immigration comes people following process, vaccination rules or regulations, baselines, people that can be monitored. But when you have a slew of individuals coming here illegally, you don't know they're here, you don't know where they've been, you don't know what diseases they've been exposed to. Many of them have been exposed to horrible living conditions. Many of them are children, many of them are pulled away and put and treated, and you don't know. We have seen an influx of different kinds of diseases, not just main extreme diseases that we haven't seen in decades, but some that we aren't familiar with because they're not from here. They're not from Mexico. They're from South America. They're from elsewhere. That's a concern. And I think that when we have law and order and strong border infrastructure, that's also going to help with the human trafficking issue and ensuring that people who come here who are apprehended aren't exposing. I mean, it's a national, I look at inoculations, and many people do, as a national security issue.
Right.
Health and public safety is huge. That's why we used to have Ellis Island. When my family came over from Austria, and many other families came over, they had to be processed and quarantined. Everything had to be looked at. It was a much different day and age, mind you. There wasn't the types of air travel and other things that we have today. But still, there was a process and a function for everything because national security is top priority. And so law and order, border infrastructure, all of that kind of thing will feed into a strong national security base and help limit these types of risks and free the parents up to be able to then again make a strong choice for themselves.
Exactly.
But I don't think people should be, like you said, forced into vaccinating out of fear. Right. A mere fear. There is an actual risk there right now because of what we've been exposed to as a nation and our weakening of our borders and whatnot under previous administrations. But hopefully that'll all change. And I'm glad to hear that you're part of the movement to allow parental choice. And also I think, doctor supervision, right?
Yeah. And, I think, that's the whole thing is that we try to circumvent parents' rights in a lot of different things that are going on right now. And, the children belong to the parents, not to the state, not to
the feds.
Not to the government. But, the parents should be able to make the choices for their kids.
Right. And I think that's an important distinction you make there. I want to thank you so much for coming on the Erin Cruz Show. What you're doing, stepping up and running for office, putting yourself out there day after day, doing the hard work. We're just so grateful.
And you know what it's like, too, so.
Yes. But, it's very local. It's different running an entire state. Yes, it's bigger. But
well, yeah.
Local is also difficult because it's more intimate. And while obviously U.S. Senate is really picky, when you get to this local level, especially California State Assembly, there are so many issues that are on the table right now that are the media just want to balk at and pick at and point at you and say you're racist or you're anti-immigrant or you're this or you're that. That's not it at all. And I'm glad to see you're not afraid to just say it's not about illegal, legal immigrants. It's about illegal immigration. It's not about, X, Y, and Z. Let's get down to the real issues here.
Right.
It's important, and I'm glad you're a loud voice, and I'm sure that your constituents, future constituents, are grateful you're running. Could you just do a real quick recap? Tell us your name, why you're running for office, what your platform is, and then let people know your website so they can get connected with you. Time, talent, treasure.
Okay, so Toni Holle, running for Assembly District 52, which is Chino, Ontario, Montclair, Pomona, and a small portion of Fontana. And my basic platform is less government, lower taxes, less regulations, hopefully bringing back more jobs, protect the Second Amendment. That's a big one with me. And my website is ToniHolle4Assembly2018.com.
Wonderful. And people, time, talent, treasure, get involved. Toni can use your help.
Yes.
You'll find out more about her. Ask her questions. You can send her an email. You can go to her website. And
they can contact me directly through the website.
So. Wonderful. Thank you so much for being on the Erin Cruz Show. We can't wait
Erin.
to hear how your campaign is going.
Thank you.
To hear more and to learn more on how you can make an impact or about the Erin Cruz Show, visit us online at erincruz.com. That's ERINCRUZ.com.